Welcome to Dialing In Your Coffee Business, where we help cafe and roastery owners build a healthy coffee business that takes great care of people, including them. I'm Michael Ryan. I'm a certified business coach and consultant that helps cafe and roastery owners build a healthy, profitable coffee business that takes great care of all the people, including them. On today's episode, I'm joined by Maxwell Mooney. We recorded this episode before he took his job at Onyx Coffee Lab. We're diving into the second part of talent management. This is part of our 5-part series on talent management. We're talking about interviewing today, how to interview people effectively. The vast majority of coffee shop and coffee roastery owners that I talk to think they have interviewing dialed in, and they don't. And I know they don't because of how often they complain about their staff. If you are frustrated with your staff, it is because you have not fully dialed in your interviewing process. On this episode, we'll talk about what problems that causes, how to dial in your interviewing process, and actionable tips and tricks to do a better job interviewing in a way that's appropriate for the position you're fulfilling. And now my conversation with Maxwell Mooney. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're talking about interviewing today. In this series on talent management, we're going through kind of the 5 major stages that create the framework for finding and retaining and developing good people. We started with recruiting, just proactively putting the word out that you're hiring. This episode, we're going to talk about interviewing. And then in future episodes, we're going to cover onboarding, developing people, and compensating people as a way of understanding how to find, onboard, and retain good people. Interviewing, if there is a process in place, generally interviewing is like the one thing that people have sort of figured out. Mm-hmm. I've seen places where they had the interview part figured out, but definitely no recruiting, really no onboarding. It was just interview and then you're hired. Good luck. Mm-hmm. So this is the piece that people generally think, oh, we got this. Mm-hmm. I would submit to you, and Maxwell, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I would submit to you that you probably don't got this. You probably have an interview process, but it's not ideal. And the best way I know of to assess the quality of the interview process is to look at the quality of the people that you've put in your company and how long they stick around for. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with folks who assure me that their interview process is bulletproof and then proceed to complain about their staff for hours and hours and hours. And so the system you have is perfectly designed to get you the people that you have hired. And so if you are not a huge fan of the folks who are in your business, if you don't feel like you've got rock stars at every level, then you can't say in the same breath that your interview process is on point. Mm-hmm. But what do you see, Maxwell, in general, broad brushstrokes, what do you see in the coffee industry with the interviewing process, if we can call it a process that folks have? What do you see as the general state of things? Just kind of taking a step back and look at the coffee industry as a whole. How is our interviewing game when compared to maybe other industries in the service industry?
I think it depends on the position.
That's a good word.
You want your interview, like the level of intensity of your interview process to match the type of position that you're hiring for.
Yeah.
So for example, one time before I opened Narrative and decided I was going to, do that, I interviewed for a job up in Bellingham, Washington for this company. And it was a 9-stage interview, which is definitely more than anyone else I've ever heard of. But it was unbelievably laborious. It required like 3 phone interviews, 2 in-person interviews with different, people at different levels, and then I think one with the president of the company, and it was like a pretty decent sized company up there. If you're in Bellingham, you probably know which large software company I'm talking about. So it's just this whole process. And, if you did that for a barista, then you would have nobody ever. And rightly so. Even for an upper level position, you probably shouldn't have a 9-stage interview. So make sure that, it matches.
Cap it at 7.
Yeah, exactly. 7's like, the right amount. Make sure that you're, it matches the level of investment and time that you're asking of
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
Because like, think about it. Like, would you like to have done that if you didn't get the job? Right. And make sure that your interview process can help facilitate
Yeah.
a positive experience for everybody who leaves,
Interesting.
if and didn't cost too much of their time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I like that a
That's
lot.
one part of that.
What's that?
That's one part of it. I don't even. You can ask me if I didn't answer your question fully. Feel free to lob that back at me again. I
I
know I got a
like
little
it. No,
distracted.
I like it. The principle of the level of intensity should match the position, I think is a great universal principle that we can kind of build the rest of the conversation around. Because yeah, we can't really talk about interviewing in general
Mm-hmm.
as much as I mean, we could, but we should probably talk about it more like, hey, what would it look like for a barista level
Mm-hmm.
position, and maybe what would it look like if you're trying to hire somebody for a more management level position.
Yeah.
When I was thinking of the topic, I was thinking specifically of barista entry level, which I'd love to start there because it would also give us sort of the bare minimum as far as interviewing goes. If we're thinking of an entry level type position like a barista, and building out a framework for interviewing in that context, then we would also have sort of the floor for like um, don't do less than this
Yeah.
in general. And
Yeah. I remembered.
I think what we're going to build out is more than most people are doing.
Yeah.
Period. Even for their upper level positions. But
Yeah.
what are you saying?
I was just gonna say I remembered what the question specifically remembered what the question specifically was, which is how are we doing as a coffee industry? And I guess at the most honest level, I can't answer your question yet
Mm-hmm.
because for the most part, all the folks that I've been working with have been asking different questions and about specifically interviewing,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't gotten into that.
I
I have
gotcha.
been running my own thing for the last 7-8 years, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know as a survey of the industry as a whole
Yeah.
of how folks are doing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I suspect there are a lot of places that aren't quite doing as
Mm-hmm.
well at this as
Yeah.
would like to be, and
Yeah.
that seems to be your experience.
Yeah. The two things I see most commonly is no process whatsoever,
Mm-hmm.
or a process that is weak at best.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things a lot of people, especially when they're starting out, and this comes up on strategy calls a lot, they'll say something like, I'm not from the coffee industry and I feel like I'm at a disadvantage. There are certain aspects that I actually think it's an advantage to not come from the coffee industry. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the potential advantages is you've seen it done. You've seen things, especially the business side of things, you've seen them done potentially differently.
Mm-hmm.
If you've interviewed at a software company that has a 9-stage interview process, it's unlikely that you're going to go open a cafe and have no process whatsoever.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not saying have a 9-step process, but you've seen a process. That kind of experience, it leaves an imprint. The most laborious interview process I ever went through was actually to be an RA in college.
Nice.
But I distinctly remember that experience. And because I got the position, I don't know that I don't know that I could honestly answer your question about like how would I feel if I didn't get the job, because I did get the job. But I can tell you how it made me feel when I got the job, and it made me feel like I earned it.
Mm-hmm.
It made me feel like it wasn't just handed out to me. And I think having a process, and even if you have somebody who you're going to hire, you are 99% sure that you're going to hire this person internally, still pushing them through that process.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen, I was working with one company, and the wholesale, roastery wholesale manager was leaving, and they basically told somebody that they had the job.
Mm-hmm.
And I told the owners, like, you still need to put that person through the process. Otherwise, they're going to just come into this with potentially no sense of earning it, potentially, a sense of entitlement. Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I was promised by so-and-so. Well, yeah, but that's not how things work here.
Yeah.
Yes, they said that. Yes, you are their vote, but they don't have the, authority to promise you a position because they're leaving. And still pushing somebody through whatever level of intensity process you have for that level of position is a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
So for somebody who is looking at building out a process for their entry level, and let's make it specific to barista for right now.
Yeah.
What are, not 9 steps, but how many steps, and what kind of things would you think, or what kind of things did you do at Narrative that you feel like served you well, and if people adopted them, they would work all right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna segment this question into 2 different situations.
Do it.
Because I do different interviews differently for these 2 situations.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, I'll take the easier one first, and that's the like already established coffee shop. I'm hiring for a barista. Within that, I'm maybe filling 1 or 2 roles. So I think that if you listen back to our previous episode where we talked about recruiting, I think that will kind of give you some clarity around what exactly I mean by this. But sometimes you're looking for a specific personality to round out, or a specific skill set or approach to round out your team's composition. And so, if I'm looking for that, a lot of times, like, I'm asking questions that are more geared toward that particular kind of a thing. If I need someone who's, very like, let's say I have the team has been kind of lacking on cleaning, so I'm going to be looking for someone who's like a little bit more intentional about that kind of thing. I'm going to ask them questions about that. I'm going to, look for like, hey, what is like when you like are working with people and you have some things that aren't perfect about how they do stuff, what's your approach to conflict, which is just generally a good idea, in general. But I'm really like asking some specific questions toward that end. I'm also looking for how they fit within the culture of the team, broadly speaking, which, I can get by having them come into the shop, drop off a resume in person, having them connect with people. The interviewing stage, like at an interview level, like you should be scarce and make sure that they find someone to talk to, like another barista or somebody, to say like,
the owner should be scarce.
Yeah, the person interviewing or the team interviewing should be scarce. So that way they have to interact with your team, especially, if your goal is to hire a barista, which is someone who can handle a slightly uncomfortable situation. They should be able to do that, right? Like that's part of the process of like, making sure that they can talk to someone that they've never met before. So that should be part of that. And then you can get a sense for how does the team feel, right? Like, and the team can welcome them in, like, oh, here, like, have a coffee, right? Like my team always knew that anyone who was interviewing got a free coffee. So it's like, what kind of coffee would you like? And you can get them taken care of that way, and then get a sense for how your team felt about that person.
Yeah.
And go through there, and then having multiple people in your interview from your team interviewing this person is always helpful. At least 2, 3 is ideal. It's like it can feel a little bit intimidating as someone being interviewed, but at the same time, like it still is a really helpful thing to getting multiple perspectives on how that person engaged. And then, have good interview questions. So we always came in with kind of a list of questions that we were asking, looking to find how that person, one, like what they cared about, what they looked for. So like a lot of times I was looking for someone who understood how important like hospitality is to an experience. I'm looking for people who fit our values, right? On our values, our hospitality, quality, making room, and creating community. And so I'm looking for people who can embody those 4 values in lots of different areas. And so I'm asking questions about like what their favorite restaurant or coffee shop experience ever has been and what made it special, right? Like was it the service that stood out to you? Was it the product? Was it a combo of both? Like, what did you notice about it or not notice about it? So many people, like I'd, ask them that question. They'd be like, oh, I really like this place, and I'm like, what about it was interesting to you? And they're like, I don't know. I just like it. You're like, okay, probably not the right fit for us. Like, cause to me, when I go in and I have a great experience, I'm like, that was awesome. That was incredible. Like your service was fantastic. This was a really thoughtful thing that you did for me here. Like when my water ran out, so it's like all of those are sort of reinforcing the values that we have and are looking for. You can ask a question.
I love that. No, yes. Well, it goes back to something you said before about being detail oriented and people who love a place and can tell you why. They have that ability to specifically call out details versus somebody who's like, oh, I don't know, I just kind of liked it. The question I had was you described an interview where there's 2, preferably 3 people from the company interviewing the one person. It sounds like you're not too worried about making the interview process a little bit difficult. I'm not talking about hazing level difficulty, but I hear a lot of people concerned about making the interview process hard, and so they'll like back off and back off and back off until they're basically like feeding the interviewee the answers that they're looking for in real time. And I've never seen that end well.
No, that can't go well.
When you basically spoon feed the interviewee the answers. And if you're wondering what that could possibly look like, what I mean is like, you care about hospitality, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't ask the question that way.
Yep.
If that's what you're looking for,
yep.
you can't put your core values into a yes, no question. Like,
yep.
You care about coffee quality,
right?
Don't you? Humility is important to you, right? Seems like, right? Yeah. Seems like it does.
Yeah.
I've literally sat through interviews like that. And that sort of like spoon feeding the person the answers in the name of making it less intimidating. But the job is not effortless. The job is not easy. And so an interview process that's where they've been spoon fed the answers is not necessarily going to get you top quality candidates. Sounds like you're not worried to maybe make it a little bit uncomfortable, not unnecessarily so, but 3 people interviewing one person, some people would look at that and be like, wow, that's intense.
Yeah.
But I think that just speaks to the quality of folks that you worked with and worked for you.
Yeah. 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 I'm not scared to make it somewhat challenging or like a little bit uncomfortable. I'm not trying to like destroy anybody's life in any way, shape, or form. But, it's like, at the end of the day, we're all going to be working together. So I'd like to have a few people's perspectives on this. And also I'm one guy, relatively privileged as far as it goes, and so having some people with other perspectives is really useful.
Totally.
Of like, hey, maybe when you thought that when they said that thing that it meant this, maybe it actually meant this other thing because of these dynamics or whatever, So keeping your biases in check is like having other people on your team that can help with that is really helpful toward that end.
I love it.
Yeah. Yes. So that's part of the, the initial kind of one person interview. And I think really it's about asking questions that help to make clear the kind of person that you're looking for, so like that it's not just like, what you don't want to do is like, your example of spoon feeding questions about your values. That's one thing, but even just like even hinting at it, like what you want to try to do is like ask questions that are seemingly unrelated. So I'll use this in a very clear example. We talked about this a little bit last, our last episode about the kind of people that I was looking for is like a lot of times it's not coffee nerds. And so one of the things that I'll do is like, I ask people all these kinds of questions. I'll also ask, like, what's your favorite band? What's your favorite movie? Those kinds of questions. Yeah. And they always took people off guard. They're like, why are you asking me this? And it's like, I am literally just trying to see, like, I'll ask them about their favorite sports team. I'm literally trying to see if you can engage on these cultural topics that come up every single day as a barista. Yep. Like every single day, because I want to make sure 100%. You can hold a conversation outside of nerding out about like 30-hour anaerobic coffees. It's like, I can do that all day. Yeah. But I really want to understand, can you hold a conversation about other stuff too? Because that's what a lot of people are coming here to do. Yeah. Right. And so like trying to figure out like, this is what I'm looking for. Here's a question that can help me get there a little bit better. I love that's really what a good interview process should look like.
It also that approach has the added benefit of assessing whether or not this person has a pulse. Yeah. I have sat through a lot of interviews where it just seemed like the person had no interests at all for anything, period. Yeah. Like no hobby, no book, no movie, no board game, no video game, no person, no sport, like nothing. Yeah. And that is, as a human, my heart breaks for them. But as a business owner, that would be potentially problematic to fill your business with people who are basically flatlined. Yeah.
I've had to pass on some interviews of people that on paper seemed really great, and there was nothing objectionable about them, but there was nothing exciting either.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so that's my to follow back here. That's
Yeah.
a little bit more about how my process works in
I
an
love
already
it.
established team.
Yeah.
In the case where I'm opening a new shop,
Mhm.
I don't know if anybody else does this or not.
Yeah.
I didn't learn about it from anybody else. I just
Mhm.
started with a problem, which
Mhm.
was I knew how to hire people
Mhm.
within the context of an already established culture and team.
Mhm.
But I was starting a brand new coffee business and did not have an established culture and team, and I wanted to figure out how
Mhm.
best to
Mhm.
incubate that without uh, getting things too dicey. And so I needed to figure out like how do people work together.
Mhm.
And so I came up with this interesting like plan and strategy. And I'll toss it out there because I really liked it and I thought it was
That's,
really really cool and really
I love it.
useful. So I basically did what was it's kind of like a group interview. We had two group interview sections. And we had three people on the team interviewing, and we let people know like, hey, this is gonna be like kind of a weird process that's not abnormal or not normal. So like we hope that it will be worth your time though. And then we
Mhm.
brought everybody in, and we had like it was basically like a 2.5 3 hour group interview. And we started with an icebreaker with everybody together,
Mhm.
where we did like what's called the levitating stick. And it's a classic like icebreaker activity where you get a very, very light stick and you make everybody hold it on like the tops of their fingers in a row. And the rules are that the stick, your finger has to always be in contact with the stick and or your fingers, you have two of them,
Mhm.
um, and that your fingers have to be on either side of somebody else. So like if you have you have to have somebody else's fingers on either side and then your other fingers. So if you're gonna have two, or you can just do one. And the
Mhm.
goal is to get the stick down to the ground
Uh-huh.
without anybody losing or contact with their finger on the stick. And if they lose contact, you have to start back again at elbow level. And almost always the stick ends up going straight up because it's very light and everybody's so worried about losing contact with the stick that they're pushing up because on either side they have other people's fingers, they're putting upward pressure, so then they're having to put upward pressure, and so basically it just kind of goes up the whole time. And it's a really good way to see how team dynamics end up working out
I
with a
love
whole
it.
group.
Yeah.
And it's like really fascinating to see who like steps forward and
Mhm.
who like has ideas, and it's
Mhm.
like a really useful way of seeing how people interact to get together, which is a great idea of seeing how culture starts to happen. um, so we did that, and then but I also knew that because group dynamics are so weird,
Mhm.
there are some people who tend to really step forward and then there are other people who tend to step back. And
Mhm.
what I wanted to do was because you can get commandeering people, you can get like overbearing people,
Yeah.
and they will stop. Um, like if there's someone who's a really great contributor who has really fantastic ideas but feels
Mhm.
really uncomfortable around that person, it's really
Mhm.
hard to figure out. So what my other thought was to have then a like survival scenario game. Basically, it's like literally just a word problem game. Answers didn't really matter, but the goal was to get like basically the scenario was like you're on a plane that crashes, you have like 10 items that you can do, like how do you prioritize the items in
Yeah.
level of importance. And so then we had like this group, and then we would pick people out for individual interviews. So two people would be with the individual interviews, and then there was one group
Mhm.
like processor.
Okay.
And so what that really did was enabled us to see what happened when one person was removed from the group, which was really, really useful because we had one person who was way overbearing and super dominating. And when
Uh-huh.
they left for their individual interview, I saw a number of people like pipe up with really awesome insight and like worked super well with the team. So it was just like really obvious like, oh, that person's really toxic and not going to be helpful to a team, and it was kind of obvious from the initial icebreaker, but it became incredibly obvious during the group session. And then with the one-on-one component, we had two people interviewing one-on-one. So we were able to like get through that. And then all of us at the end debriefed. And it was really fun. And I had a lot of really positive feedback from everybody who attended the interview too. They all thought it was really fun. They're like, this is the coolest interview I've ever had. And I was like, cool, this is the coolest interview I've ever held. So but it was really fun and it worked really well. And it was a really great way to just see
That's
like how the
amazing.
team dynamics could start,
That's
which was really
amazing.
important when trying to start a coffee shop.
Yeah.
that I knew I was going to have to staff more than just me or, a couple people. So that
Dude.
was really useful. It gave us both like group
Yeah.
dynamics and individual dynamics. And then
Yeah.
we were able to build like a really fun, exciting team out of it. And we had to do 2 of those group interviews, but
Yeah.
so we weren't exactly sure how people from each group would connect, but they ended up connecting really well. So it was really fun.
That's really cool. How long did each of those last about?
Each lasted about 2.5, 3 hours, and we provided food during it. I think so.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it was fun.
You're gonna talk about this in small group coaching, yeah?
Yes, I am. It's part of the module.
Yeah. Good. So that's really, really cool. That's something that I've never done personally. So that's really cool to hear that perspective. And you said you had 2 people doing one-on-one interviews. So it was one-on-one, but there were 2 people. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We did rotate out at one point. Like we swapped where some of the individual interviewers, like one of the individual interviewers came out and ran the group again.
Yeah. Totally.
I think I probably would have just left it to like the one group person just staying over the group the whole time.
Sure.
And then the 2 individual people doing all the individual ones. Yeah. But then debriefing afterwards was really interesting because there were people who in the group setting did not do well at all, but in an individual setting shined. It's just a really fascinating experience to watch. Cool. And then we could use all of that data to make informed decisions about how is this person going to work on this team? So it was really cool.
I love that. That's really cool, man. So we've, under the umbrella of interviews, we've talked about, one-on-one interviews. We've talked about group interviews. You mentioned, multiple people from the company. So 2, 3 to 1 interviews. What are your thoughts on phone interviews? I know some people who actually intentionally start the process with a phone interview because they want to eliminate the visual component. They just want to hear the person express themselves in words. Have you ever done that? Have you ever been on the receiving end of a phone interview? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've done phone interviews a few times. We hired someone through that process on a phone interview who was awesome. Ended up being assistant manager and store manager, and it was really great. Also lived out of state, so that's the primary reason that we had the phone interview.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
I don't personally feel like I would need to have a phone interview to like suss out or eliminate any negative things, especially for the context of being a barista where you're always seeing people. Like that's how you're,
right.
That's how you're connecting with the job. If I was doing phone calls, like if my job was to be a customer service rep over the phone, I would absolutely do phone interviews.
Yeah.
Right. But the context of a barista's job is to serve people face to face. So I'm going to try to match as much as I can to the job, the interview to the job as possible. Generally speaking. So I wouldn't say don't do a phone interview, but I don't know if it's necessarily adding anything to that particular role. Now if you're doing if you're hiring for a sales rep for a roastery,
right,
you're doing some cold calling, definitely wise to it. So
I was just thinking about a drive-through. If you have a drive-through where people order via speaker,
absolutely,
great reason to have a phone interview in the mix.
Absolutely.
How do they sound over the phone? Can they smile with their voice?
Yeah, for sure. Dude, this reminds me, someone I had if any of you listeners haven't seen this YouTube video that I was on that did pretty well, someone in the comments section said I sounded like Ben Shapiro, and I've never been able to unhear it now. So anyway, now I just feel like I sound like, Ben Shapiro, and I can't unhear that.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it helps that I have a better microphone here.
Yeah, okay.
Like I was using a lapel mic that had exactly 0 low end, so all the high end.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway,
I get it.
Maybe you don't want to hire someone that sounds like Weird Al or Nardwar or something.
Nothing against those people as people, just their voices. That's awesome. Last question, kind of on this level. What do you think about working interviews? Where somebody actually comes in and is maybe even behind bar.
I understand why people would like to do them. I philosophically am opposed to any work that happens for which someone is not compensated. I believe you should pay someone what they are owed for their work. And to me, those kinds of interview processes, they tend to benefit people who can absorb the opportunity cost the most. So while I understand that that could be a really useful thing in the context of getting a great idea of what someone's work is like, I don't necessarily know if it would be the most beneficial, because one, it tends to, when I say, folks who could bear the opportunity cost, like folks who come from wealthier backgrounds, for example, it gives them more access to those kinds of jobs than folks who don't. And given the fact that I come from a really poor background, I know that I wouldn't have been able to pull that kind of a thing off, but I will work my tail off at any job that I'm part of. So I don't feel comfortable with those kinds of things, and I never have, and I will never use them. I will also never accept unpaid internships for that exact reason. So that's a little bit of a personal thing, but I also don't know if it would necessarily give you the most accurate reflection of someone's real work, because one, they don't have any muscle memory, so they're sort of like learning as they're going anyway. Two, a lot of times people are more motivated to work hard early on and then start losing steam over time. So it's just like, I don't know how much benefit you get from it personally, but I'm willing to talk. So
yeah,
you got different opinions, hit me up.
I don't actually. I understand them. I think I understand the thought process or the motivation. But I've never seen them pulled off successfully in the coffee industry. And I can't really imagine them being pulled off successfully, because what are you going to do? Toss them on register?
Yeah.
They have no idea where the buttons are. So they're going to look incompetent and get frustrated, or, toss them on bar. People who are, moderately self-aware generally don't like being forced to make a fool of themselves. And a working interview feels kind of like an invitation to just put them in a position where they look like an idiot. Unless they're so thick-skinned that they just really don't care. I don't know. I'm the kind of person who, I hadn't thought of it precisely the way that you just described it, but it makes total sense. I was viewing it more as, would this be an effective approach in finding better candidates? And I just can't, unless you have them do dishes to assess if they are somebody who is willing to do dishes. I can't really fathom
and you can call references for that kind of a thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And not waste their time.
Yeah, I like the unpaid work time perspective. I have heard folks say the legal implications of, like, if they're doing a working interview and they get injured, that would be like a legal nightmare potentially. I don't know any of it. I just haven't seen it done successfully. And so I understand logically how it could seem like a good idea, but I can't find any case studies where it has been a good idea, and the ways in which it could be problematic are many.
I know the food industry, like folks like in kitchens and stuff, that's like staging is a normal thing.
Say what now? Staging?
Stage. Yeah. It's the French term for a working interview, basically.
Well, that makes it sound way cooler.
Yeah. If you put anything in French, it sounds
better. Now I want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Staging.
Yeah. There are many things about the food and beverage industry that are problematic, and that can definitely be one of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, cool.
There's nobody in the world who I think should work for me for free, even if they think I'm really cool and good at stuff. Like, please don't ever. So anyway, it drives me crazy.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
If you want a job with Maxwell, don't offer to work for free.
I mean, currently there's no jobs that I have to offer, but I mean, anyone there are many people out there who will tell you that I have said no to their internship requests.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, I just can't do it. It just doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for my body, my soul. So.
Yeah. I hear that for sure. To zoom out a little bit and let's look specifically at existing cafe entry level positions, say barista. What would be the basic framework that you would suggest as far as the interview process goes? Like, would you be satisfied with a single interview, or would you want, two interviews, what would be some of the like kind of the rough contours of like existing cafe, barista level? How many steps and what are the steps that you would kind of encourage people to consider?
Yeah. So one of the things I usually recommend is that people like they have a very clear process that helps to get at what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave some examples earlier. Another thing that I think can be really helpful is just like survey questions beforehand. Like for
Ooh,
example,
yeah.
if one of the major things that you are looking for is someone who can work on Sundays and once weekends primarily,
Totally.
like
Yeah.
ask the questions like what's your availability. Some of those are just like real nuts and bolts application things that are like immaterial to someone's personality. They're like their type of work that they do, their work ethic, any of those kinds of things. They're just literal functional restrictions. So ask those types of things that are like fundamentally necessary for each thing and are kind of yes or no questions. Ask those in surveys. Don't waste someone's time in person and don't waste your own time.
So good.
That can be really, really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I recommended that for a number of people. I think having one, I don't really recommend more than one interview for an entry level position. I just don't think you need to if you're asking good questions and you have enough people there. I don't think you should have to call people back for second interviews for an entry level position. For management level positions, absolutely. There's enough real meat and potatoes you got to dig into in terms of like how do you relate to people, how do you move through conflict, how do you like how do you treat people, like there's a lot of bigger questions that really impact your organization, but entry level positions are entry level and like we're not the level of intensity of that interview should match the position available, which is that it's an entry level position. There's only so much that it's going to be able to do within the context of the organization. It takes 2 weeks to train, 3 weeks to train. It's like that should match that, in my estimation.
Just pausing to draw a highlighter across what you just said. 2 weeks to 3 weeks to train. I've seen barista training stretched out 6 months.
That is unacceptable.
That's
I've seen it too.
Unnecessary and unacceptable. It's such a There's so many problems arise from stretching it out that much. I had one question I forgot to ask it earlier. You mentioned folks get a free drink. What if I got like a caramel mocha at your shop? Would you still hire me?
Yes, absolutely, I would. Yeah. Some people might not, but I would.
I have worked at
Caramel
places.
Slap.
Yeah, I've worked at places where the unofficial rule. Didn't necessarily officially come from the owner, but I worked at places where they're like, if they order something not coffee, they're basically like us. If they like order tea, then they're automatically on the no list.
See, that wouldn't be an automatic no for me. That would prompt a question. That would prompt a question though, of like, hey, like I noticed you're drinking tea. Like, do you like coffee? Because you have to like coffee to be able to do, or at least be willing to taste it daily to do this job. And I have worked with people who didn't drink coffee as a barista, and it's like that's not appropriate. Like you have to at least be willing to taste it.
Totally.
Because you have to make it taste good. But it's like maybe it's late in the afternoon and you've already had 4 cups of coffee and you don't want any more caffeine. So
totally. My last question for you, and you kind of already started going here, but we've outlined kind of a foundational framework for an entry level position, and before we go to management level and what you would maybe tweak or add, because you already started talking about it, the one thing I think is so helpful is when we I feel like there is a helpful way of thinking about entry level positions, and there's an unhelpful way of framing it that way. And I hear a lot of owners when they talk about entry level positions, it's almost like a negative term, or like it has a negative connotation.
Yeah.
But I don't think that is true or useful. Everybody had a first job, and there are certain jobs that are really appropriate as first jobs. Like they're just, they lend themselves to like, hey, you've never had a a paid job before, this is your first one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think leaning into that and framing it as a positive thing,
Mm-hmm.
it is really helpful. And also it eliminates some of the weird expectations that I see owners bring to the conversation. So in one sentence, they'll say, this is just an entry level job. Okay, first of all, just an entry level job by itself, like has that sort of like bleh, negative connotation.
It devalues it.
Devalues it. But then one thing that's interesting to me is they'll often have these unspoken expectations of like, well, they should know how to operate like a professional. It's like, I'm sorry, did we miss the part where this is their first job ever?
Yeah.
Like when I started at Starbucks, one of the things I actually appreciated about that being my first coffee job, the manager of that location told me, this is a great first job for anybody because we don't expect you to know how to conduct yourself as a professional. We don't expect you to have any job experience before this. We're going to teach it all to you. Yeah. And I really appreciated that sort of mentality. And I think owners would do well, especially with the barista. And when we say entry level, or when I say entry level, I don't mean it as a negative thing at all. I mean it like, I'm thinking of this person as though this is their first job ever. And maybe it's not their first job, but I want the position to be structured and the interviewing and the onboarding process, especially, which we'll get to next episode, to be structured so that it's appropriate and advantageous to somebody for whom it's their first job.
Yep.
If the onboarding process is such that it's like, it's built as though the person has never had a job before. So you're communicating and over communicating all of these kind of unwritten expectations that maybe somebody who's had 4 or 5 jobs before, they might have figured those things out.
Yeah.
But if it's their first job, we're going to say things like, hey, when we say your shift starts at 8, we mean you're on the floor at 8. And at this particular cafe, whatever, if it's 8:05 and you're not on the floor, we would consider that late.
And you get
being that clear about the expectation, and then what are the consequences if that's missed. I can't tell you how many people I've worked with who never said that, and they just expect people to know. But they've never had a job before.
Yeah.
That's an unfair expectation in my book. All that under the umbrella of entry level. I think entry level is great.
Yeah, me too.
Some of the best jobs I've had were entry level jobs. And I think I don't think of it as a negative thing at all. Shifting gears a little bit before we leave off this interviewing conversation, what are some of the things you would change if we start moving into management level position? I know you've already mentioned a few of them, but what things would you add to this foundational framework in terms of the interviewing process now that we're into management and maybe even all the way into like business leadership? Like you've got 5 cafes, a roastery, and you're looking to hire a business manager. What are we adding in as we go up? Because you said earlier, the level of intensity should match the position.
Like the ability for problem solving tends to go up for each of those levels.
Good.
Right? Because generally speaking, there's not a problem that an entry level position like would face that, wouldn't have a process figured out for it. Many times we're making processes in management level positions or higher, executive level positions.
Yeah.
The level of strategic thinking has to go up. And so the kinds of questions that I'm going to ask to discern whether that person has the kind of strategic thinking necessary to do that is going to go up. The types of questions I'm going to ask are going to be different. I'm going to use some scenarios. I'm going to ask questions about how they process conflict in a more serious level. I'm going to provide less clear, like more obfuscated situations to have them walk through with like little nuanced bits to help figure out like how do they work through a situation. I'm going to like do all of those sorts of things. I'm going to try to understand what their character is even more. Not that we shouldn't care about character when we hire entry level positions, but it is absolutely essential for your management level positions to have more character. So you really need to make sure that the process matches that need. if they're responsible for managing finances, I'm going to make sure that they understand how numbers work, and they can help just do some basic level math and those kinds of things that are necessary. I'm going to ask them to analyze like math word problems if I'm hiring them to like be a financial manager, things like that,
Yeah.
simply just to see like how do you think
Mm-hmm.
about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
um, you know I think there's some really, there's really famous examples, but like one I think from Jeff Bezos is like, can you tell me how you would estimate how many windows there are in the city of Seattle? Right. So that's it. That's the question. And so you watch them like walk you through the process of how to determine that. Right. And so it's like, how are they thinking about this? Like, are they looking around like, how many windows do I have around me now in my daily life? Like, because that's the real thing, right? Of like,
Yeah.
my house has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. How many do I have? An average size house or a not average size house? Like, am I in a car? Am I not? Am I taking public transportation? What about my office buildings? Right? Like all of those
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Yeah.
And just trying to see how they're thinking about it.
Yeah.
So that way you can understand like, how analytical is this person? Are they
Uh-huh.
thinking through every possible situation that could impact this? Are they using population statistics? Like, oh, Seattle has about 600,000 people. So, you assume every person has an average of like 10.6 windows around them, multiply by that, and here's a number. Like you can just kind of see all that, right? And if you're trying to figure out strategic thinking, like you need to give them a problem that needs strategic thinking to solve.
I love that.
Right. And so it's really about trying to understand what the needs are of the position, and then try to figure out a process that helps you get to that need quickly. So
I love that.
yeah.
I'm also trying to think of how I would answer that question.
Yeah, it's a great question.
It is a great question. Yeah.
Yeah, really
My brain just went crazy. As soon as you said it, I was like doing calculations in my head. I love, you hinted at something, and I want to go back and draw a highlighter over this as well. If we think about entry level positions, as generally they're expected to solve routine puzzles, they aren't as often expected to invent new solutions to things that have never happened in the history of your company before. And as we move, we'll say up the org chart, let's say, into more management and executive level positions, the expectation is that they're dealing on a regular basis. They're dealing with new, unforeseen puzzles and finding solutions to them. I think that's such a helpful way to think about the expectations of these positions and why the interviewing process would be different for them, because you're looking for different skill sets. I also like it because it's a great reason for systems and processes for barista level positions. It's like you got to have systems and processes because you, the owner, and your company as a whole, you've crossed that bridge before as an owner and as a company, but that barista hasn't crossed that bridge before. Well, who's going to tell him, hey, we already figured out the solution like years ago to that puzzle. So here's the solution. Well, that's a system. That's a process. That's a standard operating procedure. How to kindly ask an irate guest to leave when they're throwing things at the window. Well, there's a high likelihood that's happened once before. And so now there's a process, and letting people know like, hey, if this ever does happen again, there's already an answer to that question. It's incredibly, it's a huge relief when you have those kind of things, for lots and lots of reasons. The other thing I've seen that it does is when you do find people who are creative problem solvers, they'll appreciate that even more so, because their propensity is to, if they sense a puzzle has not been solved, their propensity is to create a solution. But then if they bring that to you and you're like, no, we do it this way. All of that creative problem solving that they just did, which is a great asset, especially for somebody who's management and executive level, that's all for naught, because we didn't clearly communicate like, no, we already have a process for that. Here it is. That propensity to solve those problems or those puzzles is a valuable asset. You don't want to have it be squandered by not clearly communicating those standard operating procedures.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I have really enjoyed this conversation. I know when I thought of asking you about interviewing. It can potentially sound like a dry topic, but I really enjoyed your thoughts on all fronts for existing cafes, new cafes, and then what would change as you go up the levels of the business. So thanks for sharing your thoughts on this. I super enjoyed it. And I hope our listeners found this a helpful conversation. Obviously, with a podcast like this, everything has to be pretty general in nature. So I hope this still is helpful to folks in their journey and their process, and they can adapt some of this to their specific situations, whether it's a cafe, a roastery, a food program inside a cafe, etc. Thanks as always for being here, Maxwell. Super appreciate you and your time. Talk soon.
Thanks for having me on our podcast.
Thanks for having me on our podcast.
Yeah. I mean, it's your podcast, but I'm like co-hosting it kind of. I don't know. So anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure.
I appreciate it. All right. Well, I'll talk to you soon. Take care.
See ya.
Thank you for joining me today for my discussion with Maxwell Mooney. Please check out the links in the show note captions to follow Maxwell Mooney on Instagram at Maxwell Threadbare. You can also check out the interview he did with Upflip that has millions of views. They interviewed him while he still owned Narrative. If you're enjoying this podcast, please consider subscribing on YouTube. That's a great zero-cost way to support this podcast. In addition, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple and Spotify. And on both Spotify and Apple, you can leave us up to a 5-star review. Please check out our online courses, our group coaching, and our one-on-one coaching. That's the absolute best way to support this podcast. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover or guests you'd like us to invite, please leave those in the comments section on YouTube. If you're not already following us on social media, we are at Threadbare Coffee Consulting on Instagram, and that's really the only platform we're active on. That's where I regularly post bite-sized thoughts on what it will take you, the owner, to build a healthy coffee business that takes great care of people, including you. The content we post on Instagram overlaps with the podcast, but it's generally distinct from anything we cover on this podcast. If you haven't already visited our website, we have a myriad of free tools and trainings for coffee shop and coffee roastery owners. Everything from calculating your cost of goods sold for both a cafe and a roastery, which is completely different, pricing, which again for a cafe and roastery is completely different, managing labor percentage in a way that takes great care of people, etc., etc. All of those tools and trainings are available at our website, threadbarecoffeeconsulting.com. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. And last but not least, thank you for your interest in building a healthy coffee business that takes great care of people, including you.